Welcome to Back for Our Future, the show that goes back to talk about our history and yours. And on this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'll let Tony set that up here in a second. I just wanted to say before we get into this, one of the things that he and I both love about movies is what brought this show together, as we've talked about, is the connections that we have during movies. A lot of times we see them with people. It is a very social environment. There is clearly the pandemic taught us a few things, which is sitting at home watching a movie is not the same as sitting in a theater, whether crowded or not. There's just something about it. But it is always more fun with friends. So today we're going to pay tribute to somebody. I'll let Tony set that part up. So no reason to beat around the bush. Let's jump right in. Tony, let's talk about this episode and what we're doing with this particular one.
Yeah, so this is a tribute episode to my uncle who passed away on June 9th of 2025, so a couple weeks ago. Robin Charles Folio, better known to me as Uncle Teddy, better known to you as Uncle Skip, because that's how he introduced himself to you on the night we saw Cliffhanger. And he was pretty much a de facto older brother to me. I didn't have an older brother. I have a brother, obviously. I have two. But I didn't have an older brother. Somebody that kind of looks out for you and kind of shows you certain things along the way. And he was kind of that to me in a lot of ways. I didn't get to see him all the time because a lot of his work would take him out of the city and stuff like that. But he was pretty much an older brother to me because he passed away at the age of 65 on June 9th. And he was about 16 and a half, 17 years older than me. So, but my mom's half brother, so they had shared the same father, and that's where you get the name Skip from, because that was her dad. And he kind of took on the moniker after his father passed away, and so yeah, I mean that's so it's very difficult. I actually wear him on my wrist. He was cremated, and we went to his burial to put him next to his mom yesterday, and to get some of the ashes and put him here. Not to be morbid, but I thought it was kind of a cool thing.
No, that's a very interesting. I've never seen that. It's pretty cool, actually. It's a very interesting side of it. One quick note that I can just share on Skip, because my interaction. This is Tony's show. But when Skip came to town, it was kind of a special occasion. So I do remember when Skip was there, I would be at your house most likely anyway. But when Skip was there, it was like a distant cousin type thing for me is there too. So because he always treated me equally as if I was part of the family. So it was always interesting when Skip was around, you knew something was going to happen. We were going to do something. Something would occur. Some boisterous moment was going to happen. So
it's funny because he only, in those several years that I lived in Alabama, that was congruent and together. Because obviously I came back and stuff like that, but we'll get to that obviously on other shows. But he only really came down there 2 times. He come down there.
Yep.
So you're right. It was kind of like, oh yeah, Skip's in town, so this is gonna be kind of cool. And he loved movies, so that's why I wanted to incorporate him into this. And we have before, because we've talked about the Cliffhanger, but we're gonna get back to that story as well. But he loved movies and was a big fan of going to the theater, and went to the theater quite a bit with me. And we'll get to some of those stories here too. But yeah, one of the good guys. I used to call him. So there were three older brother types for me, right? Growing up, I had him. I had 2 cousins. They were both brothers. Randy Walters, who lived in New Jersey. So during my time in New Jersey, that was my older brother, and he took me to wrestling matches, my first wrestling matches. And I saw Hulk Hogan during Hulkamania in Madison Square Garden with Randy, and he would take me into New York City. I lived in New Jersey. He would take me into New York City, and we'd have dinner, and we'd get pizza and stuff like that, and go to Madison Square Garden, and a blast. And then we went to the Great American Bash in Philadelphia, and all these other places. So he was like an older brother. And then I had another one, his brother, Barry Lee, who was also like an older brother. I called them the Three Wise Men.
That's
They were
great.
my older brothers in different eras of my life in a lot of ways. And they're gone. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Uh, we've lost them all. So, um, so this one affects me quite a bit. Um, didn't expect it, although you know, I anything can happen at any time. Um, with all three actually, so it's different guys, different memories for all of them, um, and they're very very different in how they approached being kind of an older brother to me in a lot of ways, but all very very good guys. Um, One of the great things, so Teddy would talk about seeing this movie with his dad, Skip, called The Great Race. And I don't know. I mean, we're kind of like a '90s podcast here, so now that we don't get back to 1965 movies all that often. You know, Great Race was from 1965, and he would tell the story about getting to see this movie with his dad at the drive-in, and
Wow.
yeah, I mean, pretty cool, right? And then I mean, the movie is like for anybody who hasn't seen The Great Race, and it was a hit back in the day, but it was Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, Natalie Wood, Vivian Vance, Peter Falk, and then it was I mean, it's got all the heavy hitters, right? It's directed by Blake Edwards, who did the Pink Panther movies and Blind Date and A Fine Mess and Breakfast at Tiffany's and all those great classic comedies back in the day. And then it's got music by Henry Mancini and John Williams. Doesn't get any more iconic than that. So yeah, I mean it's a great movie. It's a fun film. He loved it a lot, and pretty much until his dying day would talk about it. I think it's probably one of his best memories of him and his dad, and so that's why he would mention it quite often to me. And um, so anybody who wants to give a little tribute, you know, the Great Race, I think it's playing on Tubi right now for free. If anyone wants to watch it there. And if you haven't seen it, homework for you because I think it's a good one.
It's super solid. I think it's called Just Watch. I got an ad for it, which is a website that lets you, which is great for the show, lets you type in movie names, and it instead of you having to go through all the stupid networks we have now, you can just go to one spot. So you may be able to go to Just Watch. I don't know if it's a paid service. I just heard about it, but I think you could type it in and see it. If you haven't seen that movie, though, it is fantastic. I mean, Peter Falk alone, you're going to get gold, but when you bring Jack Lemmon into the mix, it just gets it's really good. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's really funny, and I mean, like he doesn't get any more iconic. The cast doesn't get any more iconic than that, and all the heavy hitters. You got the directors and the music, and everybody's together. And Blake Edwards would collaborate with a lot of those guys again and over and over. So, especially with Henry Mancini, and of course they do the iconic Pink Panther stuff, and Teddy did like the comedies. I mean, that was kind of his thing. It's really weird. So when I was a kid, um, we had VHS was kind of the thing, right? So VHS was kind of the thing, and we had we were that we were that we were that family. So we had my mom bought a VHS player, and he bought a VHS player, and then we would hook them up and be the people that would record one to the other, you know. And so
Yeah.
we had like all these recorded movies, just tons of them, just tons of them. And he was in like my mom and him had like a shared collection of these movies,
That's
and
awesome.
you could always tell the ones that were kind of like my mom's and his. And he liked movies like Apocalypse Now at the time and stuff like that. And my mom hated war movies and stuff for the most part. But you could always kind of tell the difference between his collection, her collection, and then as he got a little bit older, he softened up. He didn't like really like the war movies and some of that stuff as much, and he would be more into like watching uh, animated movies and comedies and stuff like that. More of that kind of stuff growing up. So he so that kind of brings us. I we would go to Florida quite a bit when I was a kid, and pretty much from the time I was born, almost. We went to Florida almost every year for the longest time. We'd go to Disney, and on quite a few of these trips, there would be different people that would come along at different times, but on most of them, he would be along with his mom, Aunt Loretta, and I would always ride with him. I always wanted to ride. If he drove down, if he was driving down himself, I'd always be like, I want to ride with Uncle Ted. I want to ride with Uncle Ted. I didn't want to ride with anyone else. I always wanted to ride with Uncle Ted because, you get to see your parents quite a bit, and that kind of thing. You always want to kind of ride with somebody that is cool, that that is, somebody you don't get to see all the time. And that was kind of his thing. When I was a kid, he worked at Ralston Marine, and when he stopped working there, I think eventually he got into. I don't exactly remember the exact year that it happened. Mom would probably know more about it, but he got into demolition contracting, and would drive like vehicles, big demolition vehicles, and stuff like that, maulers and stuff of that nature. So he would do that, and that would take him to different sites, pretty much all over the country. And so he'd be gone different places and for weeks at a time, cleaning up these demolition sites, and so didn't get to see him all the time in that spot. And that kind of leads us into 1993, which is the cliffhanger story, which we've told on this show before, but we're going to do it. And that's the first time you met him.
Yep.
Was in 1983, and we decided to go see Cliffhanger, kind of at a later showing, and at the Carmike 10 at the time, and probably one of my favorite action movies of all time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely got maybe some of the best dialogue in an action movie of all time, and I think we definitely all enjoyed it. Yeah,
Is that also the introduction of art prior to the show Wings having it? Was that also the introduction of the big sandwich? Like, was that where we had the sandwiches?
we did have sandwiches there. Um, we'll have some sandwiches later too, because we definitely have the bigger sandwiches when we go to. There's that triple header that we have that's going to come up later on, like Apollo 13 and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and stuff and all that. And
Yeah.
that sandwich is going to be there too. The big sandwich is going to pop up there in that
Okay.
in that window as well. But we always had stuff, right? I mean, like when we went to the movies, we always. I mean, we still do this, but we just did it the other night. We brought a bunch of Popeyes into the theater. Um, so I mean, we always have stuff when we go into the theater. I mean, sometimes we buy the stuff there, and sometimes we don't. It just kind of depends on how we feel that night. But if we're wanting something else, we always bring it in, candies and stuff like that. For sure. Because who wants to pay $5-6
Well,
for candy?
it's also like you if you're hungry, like theater food is not. This is especially in our era that we talk about a lot. You're not gonna have real food. You're gonna have some popcorn and some those stupid peanuts that you threw on me all the time. The box tops.
Yeah,
But like
for
you
sure.
wouldn't have that. So it makes total sense why. And there was like Cliffhanger, there was a herd of us. There was a few of us that saw this movie together. If I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, was it not? Yeah. So, you know, it's a lot more cost effective at that point. Now that I'm an adult and I have to pay for this shit, I get it real quick. Like I'm bringing in some snacks.
Absolutely. I mean, they our theaters do have real food, and I think most of them do now. Like most of the AMC's and stuff like that, and then Marcus Theaters up here, and some of the other Regal and places like that. They all have real food now. You can get chicken tenders and stuff like that there. But sometimes if you have rewards for these theaters, but you also have rewards at Popeyes. So sometimes it's Popeyes run a deal. Maybe you just bring that in. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
For sure.
that's what we did. I mean, so yeah. I mean, a lot of times we liked the sandwiches because we'd go to Subway or something like that and bring that in, or my mom would make a sandwich, a big
Yes.
sandwich, and that would happen too. So that was kind of the thing. But yeah, this is the era where I mean, I think it kind of started there. It kind of started the bringing of a lot of food into the theaters kind of started in Alabama because I don't remember doing it up in like New Jersey and when I was a kid in St. Louis and stuff. I don't remember bringing anything into any of those theaters. Might have been something, but I definitely don't remember bringing in any of the big snacks and stuff like that we do now. I
Yeah.
mean, I brought in crazy stuff over the years, man. I mean, I remember the Dollar Theater up here in St. Louis. I vividly remember in the late '90s going to the Chinese food place that was across the street from that theater and buying like two or three items and putting them into a backpack and bringing the entire backpack into the theater and and, uh, and eating the food right there in the theater. I think I saw the movie. Oh, I know what I saw. I saw Spear. I saw Spear. and Dustin Hoffman and Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, I saw that. I saw that movie, and I brought all the Chinese food in there. So I regress, but yeah, we've definitely gotten off topic. But that's kind of where we started with this, and Cliffhanger is definitely one of those that we brought. Your cousin was there too, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I remember it being, like I said, I remember it being a troop. It was a troop of people for sure.
but everyone had a good time. I always liked the Cliffhanger story. I always like telling. We've told it multiple times now, and I don't know, something cool about it. I mean, besides the fact that Skip's there, but I guess it's because that's where you first met him, as well.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that movie too. Maybe that's the reason I like that movie so much too. I don't know. It's possible.
Well, if you think about it, though, it's like one of those things from like Inside Out. That movie for both of us, we've talked about the essence of the movie, but then you apply like the family side of it. What's the equivalent of my younger brothers there? My cousin, my older brothers there. You, my like I said earlier, my cousin Skip, twice removed. Whatever people say about that stuff is there. And if you think about it, it's kind of like I get why it would be a core memory because both the movie is something that we both love, but then we're with this group of people. So it just works out really well being like super fun. So I get it. I get that connection. That makes total sense to me. It's definitely one of those movies that doesn't ever leave the vernacular of life. I said season's over, a-hole,
Yeah, right.
just recently on a shoot when somebody was asking me a question and I just couldn't think of anything else. So I just turned on set and I was like, they're like, well, are we done? And I was like, season's over. And I finished the sentence. And so I still use some of those lines. So they still live very much in infamy.
No, that Michael Rooker line is the best. It really is. I
Yeah.
mean, me, it's probably the best action line of all time. I know that's going to be. I know. I said it the last time too. I know it's controversial to people. I don't. I don't really care. I just something about it's just so iconic to me. It's just. I mean, I have a poster. I mean, it's also great because I have a poster signed by Michael Rooker with that inscription on it.
That's so good.
Great. Um, I always wanted that, and I got it. So I was like, I'm pretty happy about it. But yeah. And then I moved to, I mean, we'll get into this too as the show goes on. We'll rehash a lot of this, but I end up going to St. Louis in 1997 to finish up and go to college and finish up my college and stuff like that, and go up there for a couple of years and a few years, and stayed with my grandparents, and I would go to movies with Uncle Teddy on quite a few occasions, at least when he was in town and stuff like that. So it was always kind of a special occasion to get to go to the movies with him. I didn't get to do it
Yeah.
all the time because it was, he'd be out of town and I had school and things like that. But we needed to see some pretty iconic films together. In 1997, we went over to Ronnie's Theater, which is theater here in St. Louis, and we saw Face Off.
Classic.
And that is an all timer. I mean, it really is a great movie. I was just looking around on some board today or something, and I was doing some homework for the show a little bit, and people are still talking about Face Off and trying to get a sequel, and I'm still seeing stuff about that movie, even all these years later, 28 years later, and people still talk about it. I know I worked with Nicolas Cage back in about 10 years ago, and he still really was very fond of having done that movie. And I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't be, but I mean, he still very, very much loved it. And signed a poster for me. I have a Face Off poster signed by Nicolas Cage. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's rad. That's really rad.
So my uncle loved
Yeah.
that movie too, and so
Yeah.
that was cool. I got to see. We both enjoyed it. And um, did you see Face Off at theaters? Do you
I
remember?
sure did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did because, and we'll get to it then, but I just remember that's about the time I started paying attention to, and that may have been, when did Mission Impossible 2 come out? Does it predate Face Off?
That's later. Mission
So,
Impossible first one comes out like the year before Face Off.
okay. So I think Face Off may be John Woo's first movie in the US, like US backed studio film. And I just remember, it may be, but I
Yeah.
just remember like this is when my interest in film starts peaking, and certainly like directors, like foreign directors and people like that, because I'm getting into indie. So yeah, I saw that one. I remember it. I might have seen that with my dad and Wade, as a matter of fact.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's a classic. I mean, I just remember sitting in the theater, just thinking, man, this is an interesting way to do a film.
Oh yeah.
And those guys just taking on each other's persona. I mean, at the time, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta were kind of at the height of their popularity, and I mean, in a lot of ways, I mean, if you like John Travolta was just getting back, in that time frame,
Yeah.
as far as getting back into being kind of a bankable star, because he had taken a little bit of time, some years off after he had done like Look Who's Talking, which was a hit, and Look Who's Talking 2 did well, but he was kind of a few years there where he was, and he's always had these like peaks and valleys in his career a little bit, but
Yeah.
he was back to being super bankable at that point, and
Well,
yeah,
there's that scene, and if you haven't seen this movie, I'm going to mess up the title because it's a lot of words, but it's something to do with something talent, and it has Nick Cage, impossible, unbearable talent, the massive weight of whatever it is, that movie. There's a sequence. What is it?
with him and Pedro Pascal.
Yes, dude. There's a sequence in that movie about his character in Face Off that is just gold. It's no pun intended. It is absolutely, for those that have seen it, it's absolutely gold. It's one of the best, and it's why Face Off, to your point, still sticks around as being one of those super iconic pieces.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, yep. So I mean, to get that title right for you, the unbearable weight of massive talent. So,
That's it. I knew it was some. There's a lot of words, Tony. There's a lot of words for me to remember.
I know people who can't remember, titles with one or two words. So when I saw that one come out, I was like, people are not going to remember this. But it is a great movie. I saw that one a few times in theaters too, because I wanted to take other people to it. I thought it was
Yeah.
so good. But Nick Cage is cool. I worked with him, and I did a movie, Dog Eat Dog, with him and Willem Dafoe, and they're both really cool. Willem Dafoe is really great. But Nick was fine. He was going through a lot that time frame too, because I think he was going through a divorce when we worked together. He's about
Yep.
to. Like she had filed for divorce on that movie. Uh,
Ugh.
so yeah, so he was going through a lot, and but uh, but a great film, and then of course we see something else that year too, another iconic movie that we saw together at the theater over at Keller Theater, which is another theater here that's now that Ronnie's is still open, very much a functioning huge theater that has tons of people every day. But Keller went from being a first run theater to then they closed it. Warenberg closed it, and then it came back as a second run dollar theater from a different company. And we saw Men in Black. Well, Skip and I saw Men in Black over at this theater, and Men in Black is. I mean, I can't imagine somebody's listening to this never saw this movie. It's how
Right.
big.
Right.
I mean, it's one of Will Smith's better movies, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it depends on what your what kind of movies you like, but I mean, Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith are pretty great in this film. Yeah,
It has so many little it's another one of those movies with loaded with good action, funny stuff, weird stuff. Me and Sarah probably maybe once a month one of us will say Edgar suit to the other because we both just love that movie so much. And so sometimes we'll just be like Edgar suit. And I sometimes tell Sarah she sounds like the redneck farmer lady where that he kills eventually. But point is it's another one of those bits that again iconic. So I'm sure at some point when we get to 97 we will hash it
yeah.
out full.
And of course, Vincent D'Onofrio's amazing, and I love Rip Torn. I was always a big fan of his. He's really funny, and he's good in this. But yeah, he loved it. I mean, this is kind of at this point, it's kind of like up his alley. He's been he's like a weird. He's weird when he goes to the movie. So Teddy was always kind of strange when he went to the movies. So he would be he'd go see these hardcore action movies and stuff, and he was fine with them. He liked them. But then he would always be like, "Oh yeah, but I like lighthearted stuff." I was like, "All right, dude. So you're kind of all over the place. I get it. I understand." But he was kind of like that. And Men in Black was, of course, a classic, and I don't really know that many people that didn't like that film. So another great one we saw. This one you really liked. My mom and him and myself went to go see the movie Grown Ups in 2010.
Yeah.
And we went to go have lunch, and then we went to go see this movie at the Arnold Theater, which is the Marcus Theater up here, and Arnold, which is kind of the other theater we go to a lot in place of Ronnie's when we're not there. If we're not there, Ronnie's a little further away from my parents' house, and Marcus is literally one exit up. I mean, the Arnold one is. And so, Grown Ups to me, see, I mean, like you like he does, and he loved like the SNL guys and stuff like that, and I do too. And so, I mean, Adam Sandler and Chris Rock,
Yeah.
and David Spade, and Rob Schneider, and Kevin James. Kevin James is not an SNL guy, but he's still iconic, great comedic actor. And King of Queens. There's really not much better. And I pretty much watch it every day. So it's really I turn it on. I turn it on TV Land and watch it almost every night. So that and Seinfeld, like every night. And so yeah, he enjoyed this film a lot, and I did too. And I like the sequel as well. I didn't see the sequel with him though, but um, Grown Ups is a good film. Did you see this one in theaters by any chance or not?
I don't remember. I mean, I've seen it because I remember it being really funny and really enjoying it. I'm trying to think of I may have, but 2010, I wasn't back yet. So I was living in not St. Louis. I was in Columbia. So I would have been making my migration event. When did that come out? Was that? Do you remember the timeline? Like what time of year that
Yeah,
came out?
about, I think it was The actual release date, yeah, it was June. June of it's right at about 15 years now because it's like June 25th, I think, of
Yeah,
2010.
I probably did see it in theaters up there, and I probably saw it. Golly, I wish I could remember the name of it. There was two theaters in Columbia, Missouri, where I live. Two primary. There might have been three. There was a Hollywood. We didn't go there very much, but there was another group. It wasn't Warrenburg, but there's another film group up there. And the thing that they did that I always loved is they would Usher would walk down to the front and he would introduce the movie. And I just always thought that was because I'd never seen that before, and I always just thought that was a really even for a big studio film, the guy would come introduce it, give you a couple of pieces of like trivia or something about it, and it was right by Truman's, which is a reference to Mizzou, but it was right by Truman's, and so the theater was right there by it, and that was close to where we lived when Sarah and I first moved up there and lived in those apartments where we had the world famous, infamous now Survivor Series marathon.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was somewhere in that window. Somewhere in that window would have been in that space. So, yeah, I probably did see that in theaters. If I did, I probably saw it with Sarah and probably Mr. Pickles, Jim Needle is
No,
who I
right.
probably saw those with. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we saw the movie The Other Guys in that theater.
We sure did.
The Will Ferrell.
We sure did.
Yeah, that was a good one. But
That was a cool theater because it was like what you have up in the Midwest that we didn't have ever growing up down here.
yeah,
Carmike was a bigger chain. Now we're only AMC or there is a local chain here. It's just I love them and they're great and the experience is amazing. But it's $18 a ticket, no child tickets. So you got to really be wanting to see that movie. You got to think about this. I took the kids to see How to Train Your Dragon, and I priced it. It was $90, or I can go to AMC for $40. So the kids went to AMC with Daddy
is that
because
the is that the is that the dinner theater?
yes,
Okay,
that's
all right.
without food, bro. That's without food. That's just ticket prices at that point.
Wow, and they don't have any other ticket price. Like it's all one price there.
So it's all one price for every seat, and every once in a while they'll do a sale, but never during the summer. Like during the winter, dude, you can roll up in the nicest theater that I've ever been in my life for $5 a ticket. It's like your horror movie, not your horror movie, the preview thing that you get to see sometimes. The Monday is it on Monday nights or something. You get to see
Yeah,
a movie.
the mystery movie night.
It's like that where you're just getting a movie, but it's not a mystery, but it's just highly discounted. But usually it's stuff that's it's not in the peak movie going season that they
Yeah,
do that.
we have that on Tuesday nights too, because Tuesday nights is like $6 night
Oh
as well. So that's good. So that's where we usually go. We usually go on the Tuesday night.
yeah, I
To
don't
the
blame you.
$6. And then I try to tell people this all the time. If you buy your tickets from Fandango, you get every four tickets you buy, you get a $5 off coupon.
Right.
Use on the next movie that you buy from Fandango. So basically, then at that point, you're buying $1 ticket. So for the
Yeah.
next movie, great.
So that's what I in fact I used that. I used your hack and I signed up and I had my Fandango and when I bought the kids to go see that and then we're gonna go see Elio this week or some point soon and then we're gonna go see I'm trying to think of the other movie I had planned for them, but there's something else. Maybe it was Superman I'm thinking of, but we had 3 movies that they wanted to see this summer.
Okay. Does
yeah,
that
so
does that theater do Fandango or no?
yeah, they do.
Oh, they do. Okay,
Oh no, Nexus doesn't. No, Nexus does not. No.
I didn't think so. I was like I don't think they do anything to help you.
No. And I get it. They got to pay for. I mean, again, you're talking about Dolby Atmos, 4K laser, super high. At the time, it was very high end. They're probably still paying for it, but yeah, it's pricey. It's one of those ones that's ultra pricey.
Yeah. Yeah. This next movie that we saw, uh, there's kind of a great story behind it. So, in 2008, my uncle Tom wanted to go see a movie, and he called me up, and I said, "Yeah, of course. I go see everything. It doesn't really matter." And he's like, "Let's go. Let's call Teddy and see if he wants to go." I said, "Yeah, of course." And so we called him up, and we go see this movie that was released in January of 2008 called Untraceable with Diane Lane. It's a really good movie. It's a psychological thriller about a serial killer who is setting all these like torture contraptions and in a way to kill certain people. And it stars Diane Lane and Billy Burke and Colin Hanks and Mary Beth Hurt. It's a really good movie. It's directed by Gregory Hoblet, and and so he decides to go with us, and we all go over to Arnold up the road, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we get probably 20 minutes into this movie, somewhere in that range, around the first kill, and there goes Teddy walking right out of the theater. And I'm like, oh, he's probably he was a smoker, and so I'm like, oh, maybe he just wants to go for a cigarette real quick, never saw him again. I never saw him again, and and I was like, where'd he go? And then at this point, I'm sitting in the theater because I'm kind of wondering if he's okay,
Right.
And but I mean, you're in a movie theater, you've paid for the movie, and he didn't look like he was in distress when he left. So he kind of walked out, and so I was kind of looking at my uncle or other uncle, and it was like, oh, this. And so we finished the movie. We sat in there and we watched the entire film, and left trying to find him. Couldn't find him. Finally, we find him. He's like sitting in his car, and I was like, "Why did you leave?" He goes, "I'm not really into those types of films." He's like with the torture and he's like, "I'm not. That's not my thing." And I was like, "Teddy, when I was a kid, you watched the worst, most violent movies I've ever seen. Like you recorded them and watched them over and over and over, and you had all this whole collection of like war films and all these other violent movies." And he's just like, "Yeah, I'm not really into that now." I was like, "All right, buddy." So he just kind of just walked out of it, and I was like, "Good to know. Good to know that you don't see it." Have you ever seen this film?
I think I have, but I think I watched it on like HBO or something. It's been a while since I've seen it. Uh, I just remember what I do remember about it is I don't remember the kills. I just remember Diane Lane.
She's pretty memorable.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
no, yeah, I mean it's good. I mean it's a good film. It did pretty well at the box office, and I mean it was it's like we enjoyed it. The two people that sat in there, finished it, enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't feel like it was. We were, and it started this thing where him and I would talk about it every once in a while. And my uncle Tom and I would talk about it when we saw each other. We'd be like, "I didn't think it was that bad in that film," and I was like, "No, it wasn't that bad." But I mean, there are like these little torture devices. It's not Saw.
right,
It's not Saw.
right,
Right? I mean, they are in these contraptions, and he does kill people because it is about a serial killer, but you're not seeing Saw like gore. It's not
right,
that kind of thing.
right.
Right? And so I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like you could probably finish the film, but chose not to. So it happens. I don't care. I always thought it was funny. I just always thought it was funny because I don't think I've ever seen him do it, which was just just yeah, just gonna get up and just wander on out of the theater, without telling anybody why you're doing it. And so it leads you to kind of wonder: should I be getting up to make sure this human being is okay, or
Right.
should I just sit here? And we chose to sit there. So I don't know. I feel like if you don't tell somebody I'm getting up because I've got some problems or something like that, then I feel like that's when you leave the theater.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
kind of like when I was in the movie Bad Moms one time,
Yeah.
and my mom like called me up while I was in this theater and was like, "I'm going to the hospital."
Whoa.
Like some issues with like her respiratory issues at the time, like she had like the pleurisy with her like lung and something like that, and I left that movie in the middle
Right.
to go to the hospital. But that was a different deal, right? So that kind of happened, and I thought it was kind of funny. Uh, so I never took him to any more movies quite like that. Um, the last movie we ever saw together was last year, and by this time he's not quite the same. He's having a lot of circulation problems in his legs and stuff, and he's really struggling to walk.
Yeah.
He was able to. We went to this Chinese food buffet that's in that's near Ronnie's, but we went to the movie at Arnold. But we went to this Chinese food buffet near Ronnie's and ate there, and then doubled back to the Arnold exit and went to go see Furiosa.
Oh yeah. Well, wait a second. How did he handle that movie? Because Furiosa is like, it's pretty rough.
So, like I said, depending on this guy, uh, depending on the day and his mood and how he felt about life at the moment, you can get him to watch anything. But if he felt like he didn't want to watch it on that day, he just didn't. So it was kind of really a mood thing with him, and That's why it was always funny because I go, well, I guess we just caught him on the wrong mood for Untraceable, because I know facts just watch movies like that a lot, and was more than okay with them. I mean, I remember one of his favorite movies for a long time, and he loved it because he was a big casino guy. He liked to go to the casinos, and he loved the movie Casino,
Yeah.
and I love the movie Casino. And we haven't gotten to it on our show yet, but Casino is like one of those movies that whenever I see it on, I watch it
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
I love the era that it's playing in,
Yep.
and I love the fact that it is it's they capture the Scorsese does such a great job of capturing the era and the mood of that in that movie that he loved that movie. And but I mean, you watch Casino, it's pretty violent.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's some really violent scenes in that movie, like when he puts this guy's head gets puts in the vice, and
Yeah.
then the Joe Pesci death scene with him and his brother. I mean, all that stuff is like highly violent. He loved that movie. He loved that movie. It's the most violent, vile stuff you'd ever see. And so it was kind of funny. He walked out of Untraceable, which is not nearly as gory and violent,
Right. Right.
but it's what happens sometimes. But Furiosa, yes, you're right. It's got a lot of violence in it, of course, which is a movie I didn't do very well at the box office because it was such a huge budget. But and of course it doesn't actually involve Mad Max, so I think that's always a problem. But it is a good movie. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Well, friend of the show, Dale Boyd of Dale Boyd Sports Management,
Doug,
he decided to watch. So he had never seen Fury Road.
okay,
So he watched. He got to see this, I think, in a better way because he knew old Mad Max, he knew Mel Gibson Mad Max and that style. But the way he got to watch it is he watched Furiosa, and there was like, there's a sequel to Furiosa, is what he said to me. This because he's not always dialed into the movies. I said, yeah, dude, you should probably watch it. And then he's like, hey, Mad Max is really good. And I was like, no, shoot, Sherlock. Like we've all like everybody. That's why they made Furiosa. He goes, oh, it's not the first one. I was like, no, man. But he's one. But so him and his son sat there, and he got to have that same thing, that same kind of experience. Like him and his boys sat there and they watched Furiosa and they loved it, and then they immediately turned on and watched Matt. I mean, there you had that's a lot of post-apocalyptic heaviness for 4.5 hours or whatever it is.
I agree.
And
But it's good though. I mean, those are really stylized films. George Miller. It's like really stylized stuff, but it's I really do enjoy the world that he builds there.
And the craziest thing to me is you and I, both professional filmmakers. You still are. I'm more into commercial filmmaking.
Filmmaker.
We have worked on a lot of sets, and we've had our butts kicked
Yes.
in our 30s. And George Miller is directing in what, his 80s?
He's an older guy. Yeah.
I mean, it's just he is just one of those dudes that like this guy has a stylized approach to filmmaking, and I know that he's at 70 plus. Maybe when he made Mad Max, he was in his 70s, but Furiosa, I'm pretty sure he was in his 80s. This is insanity.
He's actually 80 now.
There we go. There we go. Okay, so he's right at 80.
Yeah.
Point is like that
Still.
guy's making some of the most stylized, gritty, hard to in the middle of a desert. Like
Yes.
this is not that's yeah, that alone is worth seeing those movies for. And it's
Yeah.
a spectacle. So maybe what Skip got into or Teddy got into, it is a spectacle. There is nothing else like it. I mean, it is so maybe that's what kept his attention in that case is and Casino's a spectacle too,
Oh
if you
yeah.
think about it.
Well, he liked the Mad Max movies.
Right.
He was a fan of those films, and he liked Fury Road as well. But he liked the old Mad Max movies, the Mel Gibson ones and stuff. So he was a big fan of those. Not as big a fan as he was of The Great Race, but still,
Right.
he was a big fan of those films, and so he wanted to see it. We kind of joked around with him a little bit because he fell asleep in Furiosa quite a bit. And you know that wasn't really because he he wanted to. It was just because he had trouble
Yeah.
with circulation and things like that, and staying awake and stuff. Last year is a tough year on him, and so that was. But that was the last film I got to we got to see with him, and then there was this. My mom and I talk about it. They my mom and my mom and him were really close,
Yeah.
and they would go to lunch a lot, right? So they would he would take her to lunch and stuff like that, and vice versa. They'd hang out, and it got to the point over the last several months that, and I was actually part of this too, because we all went to vote on in November, and we're not a political podcast. I'm not going to go into all that, but we did go to vote, and then we went to lunch, and it got the circulation of his legs was pretty bad, like I said, so he could get to his car in a lot of situations, but he couldn't really park his car and get out and start walking around and doing all that. So he would sit in the car. We would go to like a drive-through or something, and we'd get the food and we'd sit in the car and eat it in the car.
Right.
So in this situation, um, he would pull his car in and we'd back our car up and the windows would match and we'd just all sit there and talk. And my mom and him, I was with him that day when we did that. But and we went to Dairy Queen and we got like chicken strips and stuff like that. But the my mom does it a lot. Was doing that a lot, where they would go and they would sit in the car and like go to all these different places and sit in the car and eat. I mean, it's a very vividly iconic
Yeah.
memory. You know what I'm saying? And she
Oh
talks to me
yeah.
a lot the last couple of weeks, of course. But I mean, like that's not something you normally do with anybody, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
one of those things. And they would, I mean, go to all these different places. So at one point, he even came to the house. My mom was like, "Oh, I'll make lunch," and she took the lunch out of the house and sat in his car with him and ate it. That's pretty
That's
cool.
great. That's
Yeah.
great.
So so that's kind of what he meant to us, as far as. So yeah, I mean, it was just a really good guy, and um, it's sometimes tough to get some of the words out. Really, to be honest with you,
No, you're
but
good, man. I get
yeah,
it. I get it. It's one of those ones where, again, part I think that because you were texting me through some stuff, and I think the biggest thing is this was not. I mean, you probably had some notion that maybe because he was having some kind of health conditions that something may come along, but it's never. You're never ready for that kind of stuff, especially when it's again like Teddy was. He's a cornerstone of the family unit, so it makes it a little bit tricky. So things like this, though. So here's I told somebody this again this week. One of my clients, because I guess they know about my podcast or this podcast rather, and they're talking to me about. I was like, well, let me explain something to you. Why? Yes, I have another podcast and it's fun, and we say stupid stuff and we laugh. But the difference between that podcast and this lives forever. The other
right.
podcast will get forgotten. This doesn't. And like, what do you mean? I was like, well, these are all memories. These are all real stories. These are all real events. It's not just two of us blabbing about just silly stuff, right? We're literally talking about our history and our past, and we're honoring our history and our past like we're doing right now with Teddy.
Sure.
This lives on forever. Like, this is eternal. Once it hits the internet, YouTube, unless Google, the biggest company and second biggest company in the world, goes away, this lasts forever. And so I think
Yeah,
the joy of it is one of the best things that we can do on the show, which is what I love. We did it even with Val Kilmer because he was an important part of our lives. We're doing it every week with our stories. We're doing it right now with Teddy's. We get to honor these great moments, and now they live forever. That's the kind of stuff that's pretty fascinating. So when something does happen that's shocking, like Teddy's passing, the upside of what we have with the show is while we can't replace any of the current emotions, we can reflect back on the great stuff. And I think that's the best thing about it. And movies are core parts of, like, in our lives and so many other people's lives, memories. So us having these conversations helps spur those thoughts again. So in every episode, we're honoring Teddy, essentially. We're honoring anybody that we've, spent time with in that capacity. So I think this is a beautiful thing that we're able to do.
yeah, I think that's very well said. And I'll just add on to it a little bit in that we recently had that great news about being like a top five podcast most listened to podcast in the world, out of like
Right.
3.5 million or whatever it was, but still pretty cool. And and so I had told some people that, and they were just like, "Oh, are you guys going to get sponsors and you're going to do this and blah blah blah." Like, I said to him, I go, "Listen," I said, "I'll be honest with you. I go, I didn't get into doing this show because I wanted to make money on the show. If
Right.
that is something that ends up happening because of it, so be it." But I said it was really more about being able to put into great detail all these stories so that people could come back and listen to them, because we're not going to be there
That's right.
forever. Nobody lives forever, and so this is a great way for us to put down our history in a way that people can go back and listen to it if they want to, or your daughters or whoever. I mean, it's just, or my brother's much younger than me, so maybe my brother or something like that, or whoever else
Yep.
wants to listen to it. And I think that we've done a great job. We were over 30 episodes now, and one of the great things that's helped me over the last couple of weeks is, and that's the thing, I don't really care about the money aspect of getting sponsors or anything like that. I care more about the fact that we're able to get together and tell these great stories, and they get lost. If you don't tell them, they're just going to get lost. So we've done
Yep.
a good job of putting them into a format that you can listen to them from episode to episode to episode. And I'll just share this with people because I don't think a lot of people think about it. And I thought about it. I kind of have a weird brain the way mine works. It just constantly turns with ideas and things that are going on, and that happens like 24 hours. And so one of the things I thought about years ago, quite a few years ago, it was I was like, man, I get these phones, that have all this memory and everything else. And these people call me up and they leave voicemails, and so I stopped answering my phone. I hardly ever answer it, and I'll usually get back to people pretty quickly because I'm good with my phone, but I just don't like to answer it. The reason I do that a lot of times is I'm hoping that my friends, like close friends, and my family, they'll just leave a voicemail. I want them to
Right.
just leave a voicemail because what I do with the voicemails is I save them.
Right.
And I don't delete them. I save them into a different file, and I save them. Pop, they're all saved away, and I have dozens of them from my uncle.
Oh, beautiful.
Just like I had several from
Right.
Chad Rose, and I got countless from my parents and my mom and my brother and stuff like that. But I got some from you. It's just like you never know when you want to hear this person's voice again.
Yep.
That kind of, and that's something that I did way back. I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna save these voicemails because and I've told people this story and they've been like, oh, I wish I had done that. And it's like, yeah, it's something. Again, I guess there's some people out there that might think that sounds kind of morbid, but to me, it's very comforting that I could, over the last couple of weeks because they've been pretty difficult, and so I've been able to go back and listen to my uncle's voice, and there's a lot of times he's joking with me in these voicemails,
Right.
and he's laughing and he's having fun, and a lot of them are happy birthday wishes, and there are a lot of like I love you, you're my buddy, stuff like that, you know, telling me all these great things. And it's kind of nice to be able to go back when you want to hear his voice and listen to these things. And in quite a few of them, he'll use iconic phrases. Like one of the things that he used to do, and I'm not going to lie to you, okay, there was a point in time where when you're having a conversation with the guy and he kept saying it, you'd be like, oh, you're driving me crazy. But he he would but it became his kind of one of his iconic catchphrases, and he just knew he was doing it because that's just kind of like somebody will stumble over some words and go it's like that's kind of what he did with this. Was it would be like you would say something to him and he'd be like, oh, I didn't know, and you say I didn't know, and on some of these voicemails, I have him saying like, "Oh, certain things will pop up," and he'd be like, "Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know that that was happening." And so he's that's him, and
Yeah.
he's a big lovable dude, big lovable teddy bear, which is where the name Teddy comes from. Because, like I said, his real name was Robin Charles Folio.
Right.
One more thing I really wanted to share, and I didn't really talk about it earlier when I probably should have when I was talking about me being much younger with him, was my and I wanted to share it here because I wanted to get it on record. Um, my mom and him had a frozen seafood company called
I
Skipper
didn't know
Seafood.
that.
Day,
Yeah.
time ago. I was a little kid. I was probably from like 1980 through like 83 or somewhere in that range, 83, 84. and so they had this company, and this is where that big freezer that's been my parents, you've seen that freezer, that
Oh
big
yeah.
long white freezer they used to
Yeah.
have. That freezer was bought because they would store seafood into that freezer and pull out their product and everything else, and then they had was a truck, they had this truck, and we'd go around and we would park in different parking lots and do setups, kind of like a food truck, but not. You weren't making food; you were just selling frozen seafood. And we would have samples, and it was just peel and eat shrimp, and a lot of other stuff. But peel and eat shrimp was one of the ones that you could have like a sample of, and they were people would come to. Sometimes people would come and sit there and be like, no, I don't know about having to peel the shrimp and blah 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 blah. Then I would do it as like a 4 or 5 year old. and just
That's
showed
fantastic.
them the process of how easy it was. And my mom would my mom would tell you would be like, man, you were a really good selling point for that company. They would be like, well, if the little kid could do it, I should be able to do it.
That's
So they
fantastic.
had that company for a few years, and then it went away. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? He was the best. Um, my older brother and one of my best buddies, and yeah, I'm gonna miss him a lot.
Yeah, understood. Um, that seems like a very appropriate place for us to step away. Are you good with that? Yep. All right. So again, thank you guys for listening. I'm not doing any shameless plugs because that's not what we do. Um, but again, Tony, you can do your little classic sign off that we all know and love.
Have a great weekend, but also, just tell your family members you care about them. I know it sounds so cliche. Everyone always says this kind of stuff, and then you really don't quite grasp the concept of how much you miss them until you can no longer tell them. So do a better job of telling your family and friends how much you care about them. You don't have to get wooshy gushy if you don't want to, but just try to do a better job of it. Because I think we all can do a better job of it. All right. Peace. Have a good weekend.